Good morning, everybody. I'd like to mention a couple of things right off the bat here. We do have somebody, if anybody is going to Nashville this afternoon, we do have somebody who would like a ride there, or would like to be able to go along with them. What time is your flight? 5:30. 5:30. So Steve would like to get, if possible, hitch a ride with somebody to Nashville for a 5:30 flight, if it's possible. The hotel, of course, checkout time is 11, and there's generally a little bit of flexibility there for anybody who hasn't gotten out of the room yet. The way our schedule is today, we will have a break right at 11, and so you could get to your room and get checked out right then. I'm sure it wouldn't be a problem. As I mentioned last night, anybody who needs to put luggage in the boardroom, which is that first room on the left, that's fine. We've got that all day. Luggage or possessions can be put in there and kept safely. We are, for those who will be here at lunchtime, of course the restaurant's open, but they are going to be actually setting up lunch right in this room like we did at the banquet last night for anybody who does want to eat lunch, and you would pay for it in here. And part of the idea of that arrangement was because nobody knew what the security situation would be like today, and the restaurant today, being Father's Day, was going to be open to the public, whereas yesterday we had the whole establishment, so it was envisioned as being just yet another added security measure. But it'll be really nice for those who are sticking around for lunch, because it'll be cozy and continuing to be able to experience the interaction and fellowship. So it'll be a good lunch set up in here. They'll have the means of it being paid for right on the spot. So we've also got that to consider, and we will be having the Q&A a little bit later for those who do remain, who are speakers. So that will also be something that we will look forward to, and of course continuing to get everything on tape so that in the aftermath of the conference it'll be available online or in other configurations for whoever wants it. At this time I'm going to ask Dr. Tom Sunic to come up, and he's going to have some opening words to say, and then we will get down to the business of hearing our guests from Japan and our Swiss guests. Very interested in hearing what they have to say this morning, and thank everybody for being here.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I'm very pleased for such a nice turnout. I would just like to make a few comments, if you don't mind. Rick has explained us a little bit about the schedule of today, but I'm pretty much sure we'll have enough time for some critical questions during the question and answer segment. I certainly need to extend my best greetings again to my good friends here, and of course I'm looking forward to the speech of my colleague and good friend Rachel Pendergraft. Of course, there are my good colleagues here from Switzerland. I'll do my best if I need to translate something into French or German, but those folks are perfectly fluent in English, so I don't think there will be any problems whatsoever. Then, of course, we have our Japanese friends. Yesterday I was doing a double translation with William Johnson. We did the translation from Japanese into German and then in English and vice versa, so I got it all mixed up. But thank you again, gentlemen, for showing up this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, if you look at a little bit at the schedule today, one thing that caught my eye, it says opening comments. Why nationalism? Please do allow me, this is my profession after all. I used to be a professor in political science. As you may have noticed, I'm almost obsessed with the etymology of words. I really always want to find out where the words come from and how people define those words in a different historical epoch. Now, we often use the term white nationalism. You may probably realize that this is a somewhat derogatory this word has a somewhat derogatory meaning in the United States of America. In Europe, for a variety of reasons, people don't use weiße Nationalisten or the nationalism. It's simply avoided. In fact, I've noticed themselves identitarians. I'm sure you're familiar with this massive movement now all over Europe, all the way from Scandinavia all the way down to Greece. There's a tendency among what's called nationalists to rebrand themselves as identitarians. Why? Well, let's put it bluntly, gentlemen. I talked about this yesterday. We live in a self-censoring world. We're being defamed, maligned, defamed by myself also. I'm on a blacklist of SPLC, ADL, and whatever. So we are trying to find sometimes some vocables that may sound a little bit more neutral. So I think, this is just my private opinion, that the word identitarian may sound a little bit more digestible, it may sound a little bit less loaded, and I guess it can be a good defensive weapon. Of course, we are familiar with the term alt-right, which was coined here by Richard Spencer, actually by my good colleague, former mentor Paul Gottfried. He's of Jewish origin, it's a long story anyway, but in the 2005, he actually coined this term, alt-right. Then, of course, we have the new right in Europe, which also causes a great deal of misunderstandings, because the European new right has nothing to do with neocons in America. They are mortal enemies. So, ladies and gentlemen, again and again, I keep harping on it. When you study political phenomena, try first to focus on the expression itself and try to find out who actually coined this expression and in which historical context. Other than that, also let me tell you, one thing which I think is a certainly privilege and a big advantage among white nationalists in America is their, how can I say, their lack of tribalism. In Europe, this is unfortunately not the case. I must tell you firsthand, you know very well what happened between Serbian nationalists and Croatian nationalists. Even nowadays, they sort of function in this negative legitimacy by calling each other names, by demonizing each other as, you're bad guys, you're a good guy. The same thing you can notice, there's a lady, I presume, here from Ukraine. The same thing you notice that this is happening now in Ukraine between Ukrainian nationalists and Russian nationalists. And this causes a great deal of sorrow. It really pains me, it really hurts my soul. Also, don't forget the same thing to some extent we have between Poles, Polish nationalists, and German nationalists for a variety of reasons. And most of those reasons, ladies and gentlemen, go back to our tragic history. Still many Germans who lived in Poland. You know that 3 million Germans lived in Poland, and they were kicked out, they were thrown out, not only by communists, but also by Polish nationalists, and vice versa. So this sort of, how can I say, this mutual recrimination still prevails in different parts of Europe. I'll tell you, I'm quite ashamed of it. And I think we have a golden opportunity here in the United States of America, now, to bridge those gaps. And even on the personal level, I know that we talk about character issue very much. Let's stick together. I understand, for instance, in the American Freedom Party, I must make some laudatory comments about our party. We are really open to everybody. We are open to blue-collar workers. We are open to farmers. We don't care if somebody's a Mormon or Christian or pagan or whatever, or vegetarian. We are truly open. Our main concern is the preservation of our white race, and not just the biological race. The way I see it, my race is not just my muscles, my hair, my color of my eyes or whatever. Our race is more than that. It's our spiritual race as well. I don't now want to pontificate inside many authors who wrote about this, but race is much more than just our biological constitution. So I think there is a golden opportunity for all of us to refresh, or actually, how can I say, to embellish a little bit this racial, the spiritual component of our race. And to do that, ladies and gentlemen, we have to turn to our literature, to our huge cultural heritage, from Homer to Heraclitus to Heidegger. And I certainly sometimes, just as much as I like harping and talking about the J question, Richard Hill yesterday made Michael Hill made an excellent, very good speech. David Duke as well, let alone Kevin McDonald made an excellent speech. But there are other issues we're going to cover. There's an issue about literature. I myself, again, I'm not going to talk about myself. I'm sorry if I'm hurting someone's feelings. But I was very much impressed a long time ago, even before I moved here to the States, by Southern agrarians. I mean, people had a tendency, even even here in America, to spoof and to make fun of Southerners, but you guys don't realize what Southern Bavarians are. This is a treasure trove of culture. Southern Bavarians, they wrote a nice book, Take My Stand. They were great poets, great thinkers, great philosophers, including Virginia Abernathy. She used to teach at Vanderbilt University, which was once upon a time before the Second World War, one of the best universities here. Then I myself, I was very much influenced by Fitzhugh, this antebellum Southern author, was much better than Orwell. He actually depicted this newspeak, this new lingo. And I have in my books, I'm quoting quite a few of them, so I just can't keep track of all those names. So by and large, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to insist, especially with younger, as far as younger readers and younger audiences, do read. Book is a sacred thing. From books you can learn a great deal. There's a massive amount of literature, and if I can be of any assistance, drop me a line. I can at least refer you to the book, and I can at least tell you who to read and what not to read, and who is the interpreter of this book. Having said that, ladies and gentlemen, please excuse me, apologize me, but I have to go to the microphone. My good friend Tito Perdue, who is the best Southern author that I'm familiar with. He's written quite a few novels. And please, Tito, why don't you come in for 2 minutes and say a few words to our audience. Please, folks, do welcome. He's the best Southern novelist nowadays in the United States of America. These are just some of his books. He's written quite a few of books. And the reason I'm a little bit possessive about him, in some of his books I recognize myself, a person who is alienated, who is on the one hand torn to his past, Southern past, on the other hand, also realizes that this past is far away, it's gone forever. It reminds me of Europe, because folks, keep in mind, what happened in Europe in 45 actually started here in 1862, 61, 62. Thank you. Tito, why don't you say a few words to us?
You people have perhaps heard that heroin and cocaine are addictive substances. But for me, the most addictive substance of all was writing novels. And I first began doing that when I was a very young man, when I was writing awful, dreadful stuff, and got in the habit of doing it, and wrote for 35 years, and finally got to the point where I was writing publishable material. But I wasn't really publishable until I fell in with people like you. People who were willing to appreciate what I had to say and were not offended by my extreme right-wing preconceptions, my nationalist preconceptions, and were willing to publish me and read me and actually invest in my books. I'm a Southerner, and I grew up in an idyllic situation in the small town South. I had everything that a young man could ask for. I had doting parents. My father saw to it that I did all the hunting and fishing and Boy Scouts that anyone could ask for. I lived close to the woods. I could camp out by myself for a week without supervision. So I grew up in the South, Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, and I'm eternally grateful to my parents for rearing me in the South, the small town South. When I was 14 years old, my parents sent me off to private school because my local public school was not terribly good. So I went to this rather snotty private school south of Birmingham where most of the students were the sons of millionaires. And I had to cope with that on my own when I was 14. So I essentially left home when I was 14 years old. But the school was good for me and required me to study hard, study 10 hours a day, where I was not accustomed to that. And I was shocked to learn that I enjoyed it. After a few months, I learned to love to study and to read and to learn, and became addicted to good writing. I was reading Faulkner and Hemingway and Thomas Wolfe assiduously by the time I was 15, 16. And I had hoped that when I grew up, I might be a publisher, or I might own a bookstore, or I might be a literature professor. Never occurred to me that I myself might be an author, although I always dreamt of that. Then I went to college, got expelled, got a job at Iowa State University Library. I was almost kicked out of there. And then I got a job at Emory University, where I was very promptly expelled, or kicked out of my job. I've lost most of the jobs that I've had because I don't fit into the organizational mode. And when I was expelled from my last job, I decided now is the time, now or never. I'm going to sit down and write books. The very day that I was fired from my job, I went home, took out my ballpoint pen, and began writing. And what I wrote was dreadful stuff, just absolutely unreadable. But I churned away at it, kept writing every day, write every day. And after a while, I got the stuff transmuted into something that was readable. So I began submitting these things to publishers. And I made the usual mistake of submitting my books to the big New York publishers, most of them Jewish-owned, commercial publishers that are interested in publishing books that will be read by professional feminist women who live in New York City and who want to read about people like themselves. They don't want to read about people like me. They don't want to read about small-town Southern reactionaries. So they wouldn't touch me with a 20-foot pole. You know, they would. I got insults and contumely beyond belief. They wanted nothing to do with me. And but nevertheless, I continued stubbornly to send out my submissions. I must have sent out 500, literally 500 submissions. And every day I get a little letter in the mail saying, thank you for your submission, but you're not for us. You know, you're just not in tune with our philosophy, so we can't do anything for you. You know, we suggest that you forget about the whole thing, and you don't need to be a writer. You get a decent job somewhere. And I kept writing anyway. I'm too goddamn stubborn to give up, so I just kept writing. And lo and behold, after 5 or 6 years of this struggle, one little publisher liked my stuff and published it. I signed a contract, and it would be 3 or 4 years before the book would actually appear. I wasn't sure it actually would ever appear, but it did. It was a slim little volume, very transgressive, very bitter, very alienated. And I really believe that the publisher thought that I was bitter from a left-wing point of view. They thought I was criticizing society from an extreme left-wing point of view. It was the exact opposite. I was criticizing society from an extreme right point of view. Later on, they found out what my real intentions were, and they took the book out of print immediately and wouldn't sell any more copies. Anyway, I found other publishers, small publishers for the good stuff that's being published. The big publishers are interested solely in making money, and they write for customers. They're businesses. They write to make money. They publish to make money. They will publish whatever has the largest common appeal. And most readers today live in big cities and are liberals. Many are feminist women. They like to read books about human relationships, about the trouble with men, the horror of women trying to live and get along with men. They're written from an anti-male point of view, many of them, so they don't have any use for me. But the smaller publishers, amongst the small, most of them are bad too, but there are a small number of small publishers, and Arctos is one of them. Arctos, whose books are on display back there, is the best publisher in the whole wide world. They will publish the rarefied, out-of-print material. They will publish Spengler or Evola material that requires educated people to read them. They began publishing me. Also, Greg Johnson, who manages the Countercurrents website, a good friend of mine, he's published many of my books. And without these people, I would still probably be unpublished. But with their help, the help of colleagues like them, kindred spirits like them, I've managed to publish 16, 17 books. On my most recent books, I've published 3 books recently, and here's just 2 of them. I'll tell you briefly about them. This is the book of a young man who is preternaturally brilliant, a genius, tries to make his way through life, dealing with people who are much less intelligent than he is. He's a linguistic genius. He can speak in half a dozen languages, everything from Chinese to Cherokee. And like any person of that sort, life is difficult for him, trying to deal with mediocre people. That is the great trouble.
Mention also the Ruben.
Yeah, yes.
That's my favorite.
That's your favorite book. Yeah, another book of mine is called Reuben, about a Tennessee boy, actually, a Tennessee hill boy that comes down out of the hills, and is tutored by an intellectual couple who teach him everything they know. They send him off into the world to conquer the world, and by God, he almost does conquer the world. He's taught everything about philosophy and languages, history. He's all my heroes are geniuses somehow. Alienated, estranged geniuses who cannot get along in normal society and have to pursue unusual careers. Reuben becomes a politician, becomes the leader of this country. He performs a social revolution and changes things in such a way that you might like the country after he got through with it.
Thank you very much, Stephen.
Yes.
It's such a pleasure. Please let us give a warm welcome. One thing about literature, ladies and gentlemen, often in my lectures in Germany, Judy, hello Judy, this is Faust from Germany. Oh, the first title is Philip. I'll just give you an example. I realize, especially when I have my lectures in Germany for our like-minded people, of course, you know that Germany is a highly repressive country. You've got to really watch every word of yours, let alone your syntax. You've got to be careful. And I had recently a lecture on Friedrich Schiller. It was in German, Friedrich Schiller, and freedom fighter or Freiheitskämpfer or liberal or something along that nature. So basically, I use, when I give my meta-political, so to speak, speeches, I always veil them into a literary narrative because it has a better legal passage. Because if you're sometimes too explicit, if you want to directly talk about the J word, or if you want to directly talk about phenotypes or genotypes and how people are different, which they are, we're all different, right? Sometimes you can run into some big troubles, especially in Europe. So I've realized, for instance, when I talk about, let's say, Schiller or even Goethe, that I can say certain things in a veiled form, which is much more appealing, and it certainly doesn't hurt my hosts, because even the host must be careful about who they invite. Having said that, ladies and gentlemen, let me now make some more announcements. I don't want to take too much of your time. I certainly want to give a chance for everybody to ask a question. I'm very, very pleased indeed to re-welcome our guests from Japan, and I would be very pleased if I can be of some assistance. Here's a good friend of ours, William Johnson, chair from the American Freedom Party, and he's going to help you with the translation, and I'm here at your service as well. Welcome again, folks. Let us just stand up and give a warm welcome to our friends from Japan.
Standing ovation.
Ladies and gentlemen, 私の英語は学生時代にとんでもなく問題があると指摘されましたので、今日はアメリカ自由党のジョンソン代表に通訳をお願いしております。
Thank you very much for having me here. I just have to say that my English is Japanese high school English, so I'm going to ask Mr. Johnson to translate.
まず最初に日本の現状について説明しなければならないと思います。それでですね、今日はこの原稿を読ませていただきます。今日のですね、前半の講演はこのように原稿を読ませていただきまして、後半からはアドリブでやらせていただきたいと思います。
We have it published, the speech, and I'm going to be able to talk about that speech somewhat, but I might digress a little bit, that you can take a look at the speech that was written in the Citizens Observer.
まずその日本の状況なんですけれども、人数の多い、そのカウントの仕方によってはですね、いろいろありますけれども、日本は現在、先進各国の中でも4番目という、それほどの規模で移民を受け入れています。正確に言えば、現在の日本は移民を受け入れていないのですが、欧米各国で騒ぎとなっているムスリムと同じく、朝鮮人という存在が日本を蝕んでおります。朝鮮人がなぜ日本にいるのか、第二次世界大戦後、彼らはそのまま日本に着き、そしてその居ついた朝鮮人たちに現政府がさまざまな特権を与え続けてきたからです。外国籍のまま、日本に何世代にもわたって、それこそ法律の条文通りなら10世代でも20世代でも、住み続けることができます。また、朝鮮人はどのような犯罪を犯しても国外へ退去されることがありません。正確に言えば、退去させることができますが、いまだかつて日本政府が朝鮮人を日本での犯罪を理由に退去させた例がないのです。
I would like first to explain to you the current situation in Japan. Depending upon your method of counting, Japan is now accepting immigrants on the fourth largest scale among developed countries. To be precise, Japan is not currently accepting immigrants such as Muslims who are making a stir in the West. Japan's immigrants are by and large Koreans, and the Koreans are undermining Japan. Why are Koreans in Japan? After World War II, the Koreans were given various reasons to stay, and the Japanese government began giving them more and more benefits and privileges. They can stay in Japan as foreign nationals from generation to generation for many, many generations. And it does not matter what crimes the Koreans living in Japan commit, the Japanese government will not call them to task. There has not been one case where the Japanese government has forced criminal Korean nationals to leave Japan for their crimes.
現在、欧州で大問題になっている移民問題ですが、日本もまた形を変えて同等の問題に直面しています。もちろん、朝鮮人問題ばかりではありません。近年、シナ人たちが日本に大挙して入り込み、雇用形態に重大な悪影響を及ぼしているだけではなく、治安の悪化も招いています。先ほどの朝鮮人とシナ人を合わせて日本における外国人犯罪は、その約7割に達しており、看過できない状況になっています。なぜ日本人には自国民が外国人による侵略を受けているにもかかわらず黙っているのでしょうか。それは第二次世界大戦において日本が敗北したからに他なりません。私たちは日本が大戦時にシナや朝鮮に悪いことをしてきた。だから彼らが日本で多少の悪いことをしても日本人は黙っているべきだとずっと教え込まれてきました。このため多くの日本人がシナ人や朝鮮人の犯罪に対して泣き寝入りという状況に追い込まれてきたのです。今の欧州の状況は現状の日本にも通じています。誰よりも欧州の苦しみを理解しているのが日本なのです。
Currently, we know that immigration issues have become a problem worldwide, but centering mainly in Europe. Japan too faces this problem, and the problem is changing Japan. Of course, immigration troubles is not just a Korean issue. In recent years, the Chinese are entering in Japan in large numbers, and they are able to have a serious consequence and changes because of their immigration on our employment and our security. And we're seeing a deterioration of individual security in Japan. About 70% of the crimes committed in Japan are committed by foreigners, and these include Koreans and the Chinese people. The large number makes the situation impossible for us citizens to overlook. Why is Japan silent while the people are invaded by these foreigners? It's because in Japan, after we were defeated during World War II, we said to ourselves, well, Japan has done a lot of bad things to China and to Korea during the war. And even so, if something bad is in Japan, the Japanese must remain silent because of this. For this reason, Japan has been taught to maintain this attitude for a long time. And for this reason, many Japanese victims of crimes perpetrated by Chinese and Koreans have had to remain silent. The current situation in Europe is now familiar to Japan, and it is Japan that understands Europe's suffering more than anyone else in the world.
こうした日本の現状を例に、我が国は行く先を考えるに極めて暗淡たる未来しか持っていない状況が分かります。私たち日本第一党を打ち立て、そして政治の世界で日本の現状を強く訴え、日本人の手に日本の政治を取り戻すべく行動を起こしました。まだまだ小さな政党であり、その数も党員数約2000人というですね、小さな数ですが、しかし確実に日本において世論の風を巻き起こすべく、私たちは着実に行動していきます。こうした実情があるからこそ、今回の国際同盟をめぐる討議にも日本第一党は参加を決定し、そして同じ過ちは繰り返すべきではないと強く訴えるのです。移民、そして難民という存在は一言で言えば、自ら国を捨てた者たちのことを指します。もちろん彼らには彼らなりの理由があるとは思います。しかしその理由を勘案すべきなのは我々にとっては善意であり、そして責務ではありません。なおかつ祖国を捨て彼らが逃げた先で懸命に働き、逃げた先の社会で貢献することは極めて考えにくいことです。人は善意のみで動いているわけではない。それを移民あるいは難民は私たちに教えています。
I am saddened by the current situation in Japan, and as we look ahead, we can see only a very dark future for our country. We established the Japan First Party in order to address Japan's devastation at the hands of the politically powerful, and in turn to restore Japanese policies to the hands of the Japanese people. We are a small political party with only a few thousand members. However, we are acting steadily and methodically to ensure that the winds of public opinion blow favorably for Japan. Because of these circumstances, the Japan First Party has decided to participate in this discussion on international alliance issues. We do this in the hope that the same mistakes are not repeated in country after country. The existence of immigrants and refugees, in short, is made up of those who have abandoned their country. Of course, they have their reasons. However, taking into consideration their own reasons for fleeing their country, it may be an act of good intention on our part, but it is not our responsibility. Moreover, it is extremely difficult to think that those who have abandoned their homeland will work hard in the place that they've escaped to improve society. They ran away from their own country, and immigrants or refugees are teaching us that these people are not always acting in good faith.
欧州においての混乱ぶりは我が国でもニュースで流れています。特に何を血迷ったのか、キリスト教圏の欧州でムスリムを大量に受け入れるというドイツの決定は驚きとして伝えられました。案の定、宗教的価値観の違いは対立と破壊、暴力を生み出すだけでした。こうしたキリスト教圏対ムスリムの戦いはすでに70年代の北欧で始まっています。北欧では70年代に少子高齢化が進み、その解決策としてなければ足せばよいという安直な考えのもと、ムスリム移民を大量に受け入れています。しかしその後20年30年と月日を経るに従って勤勉に働いていた彼らは自己の権利を主張するようになり、現在では北欧諸国民と同じ権利を有するようになりました。しかしそれは北欧諸国民により多くの社会保障費の増大が求められるという甚大な負担を強いております。ただでさえ高い北欧の税負担率が上昇するという結果につながり、このため北欧諸国では97年からスウェーデンが移民規制を始めるのを皮切りに、当時最も移民に寛容的と言われたデンマークも現在では欧州で最も厳しい移民規制を敷く国の一つになりました。
The turmoil of immigration in Europe flows throughout our news in Japan, and particularly Germany's decision to accept massive Muslims into her Christian region was a surprise to us. And sure enough, the difference in religious values only created conflict, destruction, and violence.
The battle between Christianity and Muslims had already begun in Scandinavia in the 1990s. In Northern Europe, the leaders saw that since the 1970s, a declining birth rate and an aging society. Their solution to that problem was to admit a lot of Muslim immigrants into that country. It was a they will do the work that we won't do mentality. However, as 20 years and 30 years have passed since then, they work diligently, and now they assert their own rights, and they have the same rights as the Nordic citizens. This has resulted in a tremendous burden on those Nordic countries, and they are required to pay for more and more social security expenses. This resulted in an increase in Nordic tax burden ratios, which was high in the first place. For this reason, since Sweden began to open immigration in 1997, Denmark, which at the time was said to be tolerant of immigrants, has now become one of the countries with the most stringent immigration restrictions in Europe.
こうした愚かしい現状があるにもかかわらず、また欧州は同じ失敗を繰り返しています。いつの世も為政者の誤った決定の犠牲になるのは名もなき市政の一市民たちです。難民受け入れの結果、各地でムスリムによるテロが発生し、それを呼び込んだ為政者が断罪されることはありません。ドイツのメルケル首相が行った一連の移民または移民政策が明らかに間違っているにもかかわらず、誰も彼女の失政について声を上げなかったのです。シリア難民は脱出するのであるならば、第一に同じムスリム圏である中東諸国に逃げるべきでした。しかし、中東各国は頑として彼らを受け入れず、また、イスラム諸国においては、イスラエルですね、イスラエル諸国におきましては、難民という名のテロリストを入国させるつもりはないとはっきり述べ、難民受け入れ拒否の姿勢を貫いています。欧州各国において、自分たちと同じムスリムを受け入れを行い、これらの国に対して非難の声が一度でも上がったでしょうか。非難の声どころか、欧州がシリアの中心となって難民を受け入れるのは当然との風潮が蔓延し、欧州各国の難民化を招くだけでした。だからこそ今、世界各国でこの混乱に対し、ドイツではドイツのための選択肢、スイスではスイス民族愛国主義党、アメリカではアメリカ自由党などが立ち上がっており、市政の声を政治に生かすべく日々努力を重ねているのです。
Despite a clearly stupid reality, Europe's leaders are repeating the same mistakes. As a result of accepting refugees into their country, terrorist attacks by Muslims occur and reoccur, and the officials who invited them are not condemned for it. Even though Germany's Prime Minister Merkel's actions are obviously wrong, no one calls for her removal from office. Syrian refugees who are leaving their countries should first go to Muslim countries in the same Muslim region. However, Middle Eastern countries do not accept these refugees. Israel clearly states that she will not accept them, saying that we do not intend to accept refugees who in reality are terrorists. Did European countries raise their voice of condemnation to these countries that would not accept the same Muslims and races as themselves? Far from a voice of condemnation, Europe accepted these refugees from Syria, and the tide of Muslim immigration flowed into all European countries. Why? This is why now, throughout the Western world, nationalist voices are on the rise. In Germany, with the Swiss patriotic nationalist parties in Switzerland, in the United States, we will rise to deliver a voice of nationalism to politics. We will struggle in this effort both day and night.
こうした移民または難民をめぐる混乱は他山の石ではなく、すでに我が国もまた朝鮮人あるいはシナ人によって国が混乱しています。だから我が国日本第一党が立ち上がり、日本における国民世論を変えるべく邁進していくのです。我が党はまずは地方から議席を得るべく、来年4月に行われる統一地方選挙でまずは1議席でも獲得すべく党員一丸となって当選に向けて努力しております。日本ではこれまで中道左派、左翼、そして極左という左側に寄った政治が運営されておりました。その結果、我が国では日本国民よりも外国人を優遇する、挙句今後の少子高齢化に備えて外国人をどんどん引き入れようとするとんでもない政策が今の政権によって行われております。 与党は移民1000万人受け入れ計画、そして対する野党は移民3000万人受け入れ計画という過去の失敗に学ぶことなく、あまりにも愚かな政策を掲げています。歴史にも経験にも学ばない我が国がもし滅ぶことがあるとするならば、5世の歴史家は最悪の時に最悪の選択をする国民にとって最も愚かな国家の終焉とでも紹介することでしょう。我が党は断固としてこうした我が国を破壊しかねない政策に対し反対をし続けます。日本、そして欧米各国ともに似たような経験をたどっているたどらざるを得ない状況に追い込まれているのです。だからこそ移民あるいは難民問題は先進各国共通の苦しみであり、私たちはこの問題に対して連携して対処しなければならないはずです。まずはこのことを皆様に強く訴えたいと思います。
Moreover, in Japan, the worldwide confusion over such immigrant refugees issues is not merely food for thought, but is instead a deep and abiding confusion in a country that has already been confused by the influx of Korea and Chinese peoples. We're talking about Japan now. This is why our party, the Japan First Party, was founded and is now struggling to change public opinion in Japan. We are working to win elections on a local district level. These elections will be held in April of next year, and we hope to earn one seat and grow. In Japan, politics historically have been controlled by the left, by the middle left, and even by the extreme left. As a result, in Japan, we see preferential treatment of foreigners over our own Japanese citizens. We see a future of low birth rate and aging population. The government is in the center of the efforts to bring in more foreigners into Japan. The ruling coalition raises a foolish policy that, without learning from our past failures, they plan to accept 10 million immigrants, and this plan to even accept 30 million immigrants in the future. If our country learns neither from history nor experience, it will be destroyed, and historians of subsequent generations will confirm that we followed the worst possible choice. Our party will decisively continue to oppose such policies that would destroy our country. Japan and Western countries, Europe and the United States, all track similar paths. We must not accept this course.
ここから先はアドリブでやらせていただきます。私日本でですね、こうやって講演をやるんですけれども、もう数百回やっております。なかなかですね、こうやってカンニングペーパーを見ながらやる機会というのはほとんどございませんでして、非常に苦手なですね、講演の形態でございました。
I give hundreds of speeches, and I usually don't give them prepared, written down like this. I usually speak extemporaneously. This time is a little bit unusual because it was going to be translated, so I spoke from a prepared speech.
さて、昨日ですね、このカンファレンス、私も拝見させていただきましたけれども、ここにいらっしゃる皆さんは非常にユダヤ人に対して熱い思いを持っているようです。
I observed from our meeting yesterday with all you there in person that you have considerable concern about the Jewish influence in your politics in this country.
そこで皆さんにお尋ねしたいんですけれども、あなたたちの中でサイモン・ビーゼンタールセンターというのを知っている方、手を挙げていただけますか。
Those of you that have heard of the Simon Wiesenthal Center, please raise your hand.
皆さんのユダヤ人に対する愛がよく分かりました。
Okay, by raising your hands, now I understand what you're thinking about the Jews.
さて、なぜこのサイモン・ビーセンタールセンターですか。日本語では非常に言いにくいのでサイモンセンターと言っておきますけれども、なぜこの話題を今持ってきたのかと言いますと、このサイモンセンターというのは日本でも非常に悪名の高いところです。
Well, it's very difficult for me to pronounce the word Simon Wiesenthal Center, so if you will bear with me, I'm just going to call it the Simon Center. But I want you to know that the Simon Center in Japan has a bad reputation.
How about outhouse?
例えば芸能人がですね、衣装を着るんですけれども、その衣装がナチスの制服に似ているじゃないかと言って、その芸能人に謝罪をさせる。あるいは以前あったことですけれども、ナチスによるですね、アウシュビッツなどでのですね、虐殺行為がガス室に送って殺すという行為が明らかに計算に合わないということをですね、書いたマルコ・ポーロという雑誌が 廃刊に追い込まれました。これは日本ではマルコ・ポーロ事件と呼んでおります。
Yeah, this is a little over my head. I think that what he's saying is that the Simon Insular Center is talking about issues regarding homosexuality and the gay boy issues, and that causes concern. Do you want to come up there and help translate for this? Or you want me to continue?
Or maybe I will help you because I need to.
Oh,
Right, what he was saying that.
yeah.
Do you want to take over and do the translation?
that's
Because
all right.
you should do some also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a little bit hard to do this, so I'll have him. It's good to have him.
Good afternoon, everyone. What our party leader was saying that this Simon Center is always trying to interrupt our culture and then all the things, which is like if our artists wear some kind of costume, and they said it looks like Nazi. Always. So once they call it looks like Nazi, the production, the art itself always have to apologize.
そのサイモンセンターから今から5年前、6年前でしたか、日本でのですね、我々の活動、行動する保守運動といいますが、その活動に対して抗議が来ました。お前たちは朝鮮人を差別していると。
And 5 years ago, our chairman is doing some activities against with Koreans. And the Simon Center again started to complain and protest him that you guys are discriminating Koreans.
さて、ユダヤ人のですね、そのサイモンセンターの人間がこうやってきたときに、あなたたちならどうします？
Let me ask you, if like Simon Center will come and protest you, what do you guys do?
Nothing.
Yes, yes. 戦うのが当然なんです。そこで私がやったのは、彼らに対して抗議文を一通叩きつけました。
So what he did is, of course, we really have to fight back. So first he made a letter and sent to him to protest what he is doing.
その内容は、お前たちがこれ以上ですね、我々の運動に対し抗議するんであるならば、我々は東京のど真ん中で、それこそ銀座で、反ユダヤデモをやるぞと。
At that time, his message to Simon Center was, if you will not stop protesting our activities, now we're gonna go to the center of Tokyo, and we're gonna start to protest all the Jews.
Yay! 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 All of
そ
them.
の結果、彼らの我々に対する抗議はピタッとやみました。
After that letter, the Simon Center stopped disturbing our group.
おそらく日本でこのユダヤ人に対して抗議をするというのは私が初めてだったはずです。
I think this is the first time in our history that there's a guy who really complain and fight with the Jew in Japan.
Yes.
考えてみれば、私のように何の力もない、それこそお金もなければ力もない人間でさえ、たった一通の抗議文でユダヤ人を黙らせることができるんです。
Well, for you to know, I have no money, I have no power, I don't have political power too. But just giving them one letter, we can also shut them down.
Shut them down. Shut them down. Shut them down.
今回、このカンファレンスに出席するにあたって、南部貧困法律センターというところが、皆さんご存知の、皆さんの大好きな南部貧困法律センターが、桜井誠という名前を使って、こいつはとんでもないレイシストだと、まさにこのカンファレンスが始まるその日に新聞記事を出しております。
As you know, Southern Poverty Law Center, is that right?
Yes.
I think he thinks that that's a favorite office of yours. The day start of this conference, they wrote about him, and he was saying that he's the worst racist in Japan, and trying to use this conference to materialize what he is doing here.
しかしそれは南部貧困法律センターの、誰でしたか、ドクター・ハイディ・ベルリッチですか。いや、彼女は本当に映画に出てきそうな方でした。モンスタームービー。
Last January, he met Dr. Heidi Barrick. I'm sorry, I don't know his real name, but says that what he found is when he met her, he was so surprised that she's a movie star, but it is a monster movie.
その彼女は証人もおりますけれども、私とそしてジョンソン代表、そしてテイラーさんがいる中において私と話をしました。その時には何一つとして言い返せなかったんです。
Of course, like Attorney Johnson is a witness of ours, but we had a little debate at the restaurant with Miss Heidi Barrick. That time, she was not really answering back any of our questions, and everything he does say, she was agreeing with.
Yeah.
Yes. このようにですね、南部貧困法律センターの人間は直接会って話をして、そしてその中で何一つとして言い返すことができないのに、こうやって今になってあの男はレイシストだったと主張しているわけです。私にとってこれは何よりもの名誉だと思っております。
At the moment, when we met her face to face, she doesn't say anything. I think that's the old leftist does like that. But anyway, what she wrote about me, about him, that he is a racist or the king of hate speech, he is very much honored and he wants to thank you.
そして最後に、先ほども言った通り、私はこれまで13年の間に数百箇所において講演会をやってきました。そこで必ずですね、参加する人たちに送っている言葉があります。
For the 13 years, he was doing this kind of conference, and he was the speaker of the many places. And at the end of his speech, he always sent one sentence to all the audience and the guests.
決して諦めないでいただきたい。昨日からの話を聞いていると、あなたたちはユダヤ人問題にしても、あるいは南部貧困法律センターなどのいわゆる左翼勢力に対しても、絶望的な感覚を持っている、考えを持っている人たちもいるようです。
Yesterday, I heard a very great speech of yours, but one thing I noticed is you guys are so much losing hope toward those Southern Poverty Center or left wing or the Jews.
心強くあれ。その言葉をあなたたちに送ります。あなたたちが心強くなければ、これから先の運動は決してですね、達成することができません。
He'd like to send a word that I don't know if you will understand. We want you to have a brave heart, never surrender for any problems.
Brave heart.
そろそろ時間が来たようです。Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much, USA.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed the speech of our guests from Japan. Ladies and gentlemen, we shall certainly have a substantial amount of time during the lunch, during the question and answer period to ask our guests some critical questions. Thank you very much again, sir. I am also pleased now, ladies and gentlemen, to announce my good friends, my good colleagues from Switzerland, and I would very much appreciate if Dominic could step forward and give us a nice lecture And please, let's give our group of people a nice and warm welcome. There are 12 of them who came from Switzerland all the way here. And I guess they certainly deserve some good attention. And thank you very much, Tom. Let's give them folks all a minute. Dominic is asking us, he's going to give a lecture, a short speech in English, but if necessary, he asks us possibly to pitch in with some words that he makes wrongly pronounced. But his English is
英語でチャレンジしてみるけど、もし分かんなかったら途中で。
Meine Damen und Herren, deutschsprachige Leute, also werden auf Englisch reden jetzt. Und wenn es nötig ist, dann werde ich eventuell was anderes. I will translate in English.
Swiss National Party. それとまた別の少々。
First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation again, and also to the Swiss delegation for the support. It is an honor for me to be here. My name is Dominic Lüthard, and I would like to tell you something about what problems we are facing in today's Europe, and Jews also in Switzerland. I am married and I have 3 children. I was born and grew up in a Swiss region called Oberaargau, where I still live together with my family and where I'm firmly rooted. Oberaargau is located in the 2nd largest Swiss canton of Bern, which is the political center of Switzerland thanks to the federal capital of Bern. Early on, I was born in 1983. I had to make negative experiences with strangers, with foreigners who came from a different cultural background. The first wave of asylum seekers I consciously witnessed rolled over Switzerland in 1991 with the outbreak of the war in Yugoslavia, which lasted until 2001, where Switzerland still has a share of 930,000 foreigners in 1980. This figure had already reached almost 1.4 million by 1998. Around a third of these came from former Yugoslavia. In contrast, for example, to the Italians who entered Switzerland as guest workers, especially in the 1950s and 1970s, the immigrants of the Balkan were hardly able to integrate because many of them were Albanians belonging to the Islamic faith. Let us also have a look at Turkey. The first Turkish immigrants arrived as migrant workers between 1960 and 1980. After the military coup in 1980, there was another wave of immigration. The conflict between the Turkish government and the Kurdish population then triggered a new wave of immigration in the 1990s. Today's immigration takes place mainly in the context of family reunification. And it is precisely this that is an essential part of the problem. At the beginning, there was still hope that these immigrants would return to their homelands after the war to help with the reconstruction, but instead many of them let their families come along with devastating effects for all small countries. The population literally exploded. In 1980, Switzerland still had just under 6.4 million inhabitants. Today, it already has well over 8 million. Of these, over 2 million are foreigners, so the proportion of foreigners in Switzerland has more than doubled in the last 40 years. 25% of people in Switzerland live without a Swiss passport. Just as the proportion of foreigners has increased massively in Switzerland, so has the number of violent crimes. Those who still believe that there is no correlation are naive and alienated from reality. If we look at most recent police crime statistic for 2016, we see that 115 homicides and 298 rapes were committed in Switzerland in a single year. This by so-called refugees and other persons of foreign origin. Although national violence committed by foreigners has decreased by 1% between the years 2015 and 2016, the violence perpetrated by foreigners has increased by 55% from one year to the next year in the canton of Basel City, which beside the canton of Geneva has one of the highest proportion of foreigners, namely more than 35%. These figures speak for themselves, and many Swiss people are worried about those figures. 78,200 foreigners in Switzerland were from Africa in 2012. This figure has risen to 103,000 by 2016, an increase of more than 30% in just 4 years. We remember the images of our crowded refugee boats whose passengers were supposedly rescued by the non-government organization of the Libyan coast and shipped to Italy. And we are talking about hundreds of thousands of such passengers. Also, and in particular thanks to the identitarian movement, a stop was put to this perfidious planned trafficking in human beings, at least for the time being. In addition, the inhabitants are no longer willing to tolerate everything in regards to the refugees. This is evident from an example from Rome, where on 13 November 2015, residents attacked a refugee home. We must no longer put up with everything. We must defend ourselves. This example shows that humans no longer accept to be endangered in their existence by these foreign invaders. The damage that has already been inflicted on the people of Europe is shown in a frightening way by the example of France. One could even say that in this country, the mixing of culture is already complete. The plan to breed a Eurasian Negroid mixed race has worked out. In many cities, there are conditions similar to civil wars. As far as the port town of Marseille is concerned, it is already being talked of the lost city. There are areas where hardly anyone dares to go. The Arabs and Africans have taken over the city. The total proportion of migrants is around 40%. The situation in the state capital of Paris and its suburbs is not very different. When we look at the picture of Russia today, dismay and horror prevails. Reports of rapes, robberies and homicides and blind destructive rage are the order of today. Another example of what the welcoming culture of refugee leads to is Sweden. Police can no longer ensure rule of law, said Swedish Police Chief Sten Tore Eliasson, asking the public for help on the end of June 2017. He explained that Swedish model of refugee integration has failed. The police is no longer capable of enforcing the laws. In parts of Stockholm, there is lawlessness. The legal system, which is a pillar of every democratic society, is collapsing in Sweden, quotes Sten Tore Eliasson. In 23 of the 61 so-called no-go areas, the problems are so serious that neither the police nor the fire brigade are able to attend their duty. The number of Islamists willing to use violence is now estimated at around 5,000, with around 200 criminal networks. The Stockholm suburb of Rinkeby is called Little Mogadishu, where Somali inhabitants have to say. They control one of the 61 no-go areas where the Islamic terrorist militia Al-Shabaab recruits and collects protection money. In the Islamic territories of Sweden, there is a mixture of laws of the jungle and the Sharia. Swedish Foreign Minister Margaret Wallström also warned as early as 2015, I think most people feel that we cannot keep up with a system in which around 190,000 people arrive every year. In the long term, our system will break down. Sweden is completely overwhelmed by the mass immigration. The country is on the brink of collapse. The following video shows what horrible things are going on in Sweden.
Authorities have their hands full in the southern city of Malmö with an explosion of Muslim immigrants. 90% of them unemployed, many angry, taking it out of the country that took them in.
If we park our car, that will be damaged. So we have to go very often 2 vehicles, one just to protect the other vehicles out.
Fear of violence has changed the way police, firemen, and emergency workers do their jobs. There are some neighborhoods these Swedish ambulance drivers do not go into without a police escort. They come under threat from angry crowds who tell them which patients to take, which patients to leave behind. The most liberal asylum laws in Europe mean a city of 1/4 million is now 1/4 Muslim, changing the face and the idea of what it means to be Swedish. Asylum seekers may bring spouses, brothers, grandparents. Civil servants say the city is swamped.
We have 1,000 pupils in Swedish school.
Yeah.
How many are Swedes?
2.
Students arrive at age 10 or 12 from Iraq, Iran, Lebanon, with no knowledge of Swedish. Some have never been to school at all. Special classes require interpreters. Even then, more than half won't graduate.
They are not part of the Swedish society, so to speak. It's difficult for them to get into the society.
And yet they are the most rapidly growing segment of Swedish society, outsiders who are already inside, posing a challenge to legendary Swedish tolerance. Tolerance that has been stretched to the breaking point. The city's main mosque was recently set ablaze by arsonists. When firefighters arrived on the scene to rescue the building, they were attacked by stone throwers. In Malmö, Steve Harrigan, Fox News.
What if such conditions prevail through Europe and the new future? On one hand, something must be done against mass immigration and cultural mixing, and at the other, against the Islamization of the West. Donald Trump, for example, is in favor of refusing entry to Muslims to the USA. He says, until we are able to determine and understand this problem and the dangerous threat it poses, our country cannot be the victim of horrendous attacks by people that believe only in jihad and have no sense of reason or respect for human life. According to classical Islamic jurisprudence, whose development dates back to the first centuries after Muhammad's death, jihad serves to expand and defend Islamic territory until Islam is the dominant religion. The spread of such a militant religion combined with multicultural madness is a great danger to our Western Christian world. It is a worrying fact that according to estimate by the Pew Research Center, 53% of the 7 million immigrants who came to Europe from 2010 to 2016 were Muslims. By 2050, the proportion of the Muslim faith will approximately be between 7% and 15% of the total population of Europe. In Switzerland, the proportion of the Muslim population is around 5% and rising and rising. It makes me sad and angry to see minarets producing from the roofs of some villages and towns today. At the same time, many Swiss citizens are more concerned with the disturbance caused by church bells or the ringing of cowbells. How much longer will it take for the calls of a muezzin to disturb the peace at dawn? It must not come to this point. And it's therefore of enormous importance to inform the citizens about the imminent danger posed by such a warlike, dominant religion as Islam. There is no so-called moderate Islam that is being portrayed by the representatives of both Departments of Integration and Islamic lobbyists. Another treat are young Muslim men who are radicalizing, spreading violence, glorifying videos, or who already have attracted attention through acts of violence. The following and the last video excerpt created by the Islamic Central Council of Switzerland shows how invasive Islam is.
But now, we not only became a tree, but a forest. Strong and unbreakable. The beginning of an Islamic revolution. Which changed the world. You may ban our minarets, our headscarves, our niqabs, and even our conferences. You may call our religion violent, backwardly, not belonging to Switzerland. But know that we are here, and we are part of this reality. We won't leave, nor will we give up our peaceful struggle for equal rights. Basic liberties and toleration is all what we ask for. Expect us, anytime, anywhere. The Muslims of Switzerland.
This is Europe of today. Truly, we are facing major problems and many challenges, and it may seem that all is already lost. That is not the case. It is simply of utmost importance that we recognize the dangers, name them and tackle them together. But how do we do the people aware that the danger is right in front of their doorstep, that the armies of destruction have already crossed the line? Become aware of the imminent danger means to recognize with what and whom one is dealing with, then one is also in a position to act. We live in the age of electronic networking, but it is already affected by the cancer called censorship. Why do we start censoring and suppressing information? Because of fear. Why are we nationalists being fought so rigorously? Not because our statements are so completely wrong, but because they are revealed truth. Fear is generated by truth, by something inescapable and powerful. But we do not want to express ourselves in the dialectic of the ones who want to preserve the status quo based on lies. We have recognized the problems. We are not fighting against something, but for something, for us and for the survival of our people and its culture. It's an essential step in the right direction and tools into a future worth living if we nationalists network and unite worldwide. It is our duty to ensure the survival of our people, that they become aware of their identity again, and therefore reclaiming the power to fight and stand up for our all survival. Europe should blossom again with its head high and full of pride. Thank you.